Everyone, I'm Jennifer Britton, the CARICOM Secretariat Girls in ICT Partnership Focal Point. I'd like to welcome all of you to the webinar today, which is the first webinar in the month of November. We have about 3 more to go. And this is part of the CARICOM Girls in ICT Partnership STEM Career Webinar Series, which is aimed at empowering young women and men in the digital age. Digital technologies underpin all we do in today's world, and so we must help prepare the next generation by raising awareness and promoting STEM careers as useful and exciting for girls, boys, women, men, teachers, parents, and guardians. The partnership was endorsed by CARICOM ICT ministers in 2019 and has undertaken a number of initiatives which support the region's plans to make its citizens digitally literate. And this series is one such initiative. The reasons for the webinar series are many, but mainly because women continue to be underrepresented in STEM-related fields globally. And we don't know our numbers in CARICOM, but we suspect it's the same thing here. We find that studies are showing that as little as 15% of the graduates earning degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are women. That means 85% are men. And despite doing very well in high school and university, they remain a minority in these important sectors. The main purpose, though, is, well, a couple of other things is that research continues to show that it's best to start formal career education at about 8 or 9, which is why we targeted this series at schools and teachers, etc., and hope that even if they don't join us in the midday session, that they would be able to go back and look at the recordings and get some information. Main purpose is to open a space so that young persons have a glimpse into the range of all the opportunities open to them for career choices. And so we have been most grateful for all the persons who have volunteered to speak on their various exciting careers over the past weeks. Last week, we had 2 sector speakers, Ms. Bevon Charles, who is a sustainable agriculture and community development leader, and Alicia Cowlen, who is an environmental scientist and climate change advocate. Today, it's just as our speakers are just as exciting as the ones last week, but I will leave it to our moderator to tell you about them in a few seconds. Our moderator today is, excuse me. Our moderator today is Mrs. Diane Abel Jeffrey, who is an educator from the island of Grenada. She has taught French and English for 20 years and is currently the principal at one of Grenada's premier secondary schools for the past 7 years. She has served in various capacities. She's currently the secretary of the Grenada Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, and she has served on various leadership forum, Education International Young Women Capacity Building Forum, French Teachers Workshop and Conference, and she has organized and facilitated several of these as well. She is one of our partners representing Grenada in the partnership, and I'm delighted to turn you over to Mrs. Jeffrey today, who will take us through this afternoon. So over to you, Mrs. Jeffrey, and thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jennifer, and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the first STEM career webinar for the final month of webinars organized by the CARICOM Girls in ICT Partnership. We have an exciting agenda lined up for you, featuring 2 outstanding presenters who will shed light on fascinating career paths in STEM. One will be in the area of forensic odontology and the other in the area of energy and sustainable development. And we'll get right into it. We're starting off with our first presentation. Our feature presenter today is an esteemed forensic odontologist who will enlighten us on the crucial role they play in the world of forensic science. Dr. Ewan Sandiford is a humbled individual whose life journey exemplifies the power of resilience, determination, and unwavering commitment to his dreams. In 2005, he embarked on a life-changing adventure by moving to China, where he was enrolled at the prestigious West China School of Stomatology, Sichuan University. Over the next 7 years, He pursued a rigorous education in both medicine and dentistry. His educational journey was not without its unique set of challenges. Not only did he have to master the complexities of the Chinese language, but he also had to grapple with the intricacies of recognizing and writing Chinese characters. Additionally, navigating the world of medical terminology in English presented its own set of obstacles. These hurdles were undoubtedly some of the most challenging aspects of his academic path. What makes Dr. Yuan Sandiford's story even more remarkable is that during his time at the university, he was often the only person of color in his classes. This made him the subject of curious murmurs and unwarranted stares as he walked through the campus. Many people were fascinated by his physical appearance, with some even wanting to touch his hair out of curiosity. These experiences left him questioning the worth of his journey, especially as a young man in his early 20s, far from the comforts of home and everything he loved. However, in the face of these adversities, Dr. Sandiford drew strength and determination from his unwavering support system, primarily his mother, who played a pivotal role in his journey. Alongside the encouragement of some supportive colleagues, he persevered and successfully completed his studies, earning a degree in both medicine and dentistry. Returning to his beautiful homeland, Dr. Sandiford held his head high and was eager to serve his people. Today, he is not just a dentist, but also the managing director of Sandiford and Associates Family Dentist, part-time lecturer at the University of Guyana, and forensic odontologist attached to the Guyana Police Force. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Yuan Sandiford.
Thank you for having me. Could you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Once again, let me express gratitude for having this opportunity to share the beauty of forensic odontology to all. Just forgive me, let me start this screen share. Forensic odontology. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I'm seeing it.
Yes. Forensic odontology. Imagine lying through your teeth, but your teeth don't lie. What is a forensic odontologist, or who are we? We're simply a small group of dental specialists who play a crucial role in the field of forensic science. Our primary responsibility is to apply dental experience to identify human remains, often in cases where traditional methods such as fingerprinting or DNA analysis may not be feasible or effective. And what I want to do, I want to break down some of the key roles where I would be needed in society. Now, we have the ability to identify human remains by examining dental records. That's why it's important for dentists to record down to the simplest of fillings, down to the simplest of procedures. For example, if it's an extraction, if it's an implant, we need to have the type of implant, the model number, and everything. So in the case of any disaster, it's easily identifiable. We have x-rays and we use any other dental characteristics, especially habits. And when I say habits, the Caribbean is known, especially Guyana, we're known for gold teeth, or putting a gold cap, as against Suriname, as against Venezuela, even Brazil, who don't practice such form of aesthetics. We are needed in critical cases of mass disasters, especially in accidents. We just had the Madio dormitory fire, and also crimes. Bite mark analysis. Now, we are able to identify and analyze bite marks found on victims and suspects, for example, in sexual assault cases, in aggravation cases, in assault or theft. We had a case whereby a thief broke into somebody's home and ate their cheese. From that object, we were able to identify a bite mark and was soon able to apprehend that suspect. Right? Well, like especially in sexual assault cases, we are able to analyze the type of bite mark, the location of the bite mark, and come up with a possible match. We are also keen at age estimation. With dental records, with x-rays, we can determine a patient's age or a person's age. We could also determine the sex as well as the race of the said individual just by examining the skeletal remains of the thing. Dental record comparison. Forensic odontologists compare the dental records of the deceased, we call post-mortem, or missing persons, what we call ante-mortem, and we were able to establish positive identification. And this process involves the use of, again, dental records, where we would chart the patient, and x-rays. Very simple procedure. There comes a time when we are called to testify in court, to provide expert witness in court proceedings, especially in insurance cases. We provide excellent evidence. We are called on to help the legal system understand the significance of dental evidence. Now, in the cases of mass disasters, such as an airplane crash, a natural disaster, forensic odontologists plays a vital role, in fact, the key role in identifying victims through their dental records, be it post-mortem or ante-mortem dental records. And like myself, I am keen in training other young forensic odontologists through the local universities. I'm also attached to the local police force where I would train the criminal investigation department and so forth. And of course, we're doing research right now. I'm involved in a research to determine the age estimation for the hinterland community, the indigenous personnel, and also differentiate the different races among them, where it's the Arawak as against the Carib or the other different tribes. Simply by looking at their tooth, looking at the patterns, we could determine and establish whether they are of the vegetarian tribe or the more cannibalistic or the meat-eating tribe. Basically, forensic odontologists assist law enforcement agencies, medical examiners, and the legal system in identifying individuals. We solve crime. We provide closure to families in cases involving unidentified remains or dental evidence. Now, apart from this, we play a crucial role in child care and child care development. As of late, forensic odontologists are being summoned to look into child abuse. Dental neglect. Dental neglect has now been placed on the list of child abuse. And as such, it is my task or our task to go around to small clinics and we see if you have cavities persisting over at least 4 teeth. We will tend to have conversations with not just the parent or the caregiver, but we will try to understand what is the reason or reasons behind such dental neglect. Now, I would love for this to be an interactive session, so that we could wrap and let me further explain more as to what we do as a forensic odontologist. So let us make it as interactive as ever. And by this, let's ask questions, let's roll with it.
Okay, so we've gotten quite a lot of edification so far, but I now invite the participants as Dr. Sandiford has invited us. So I'm inviting the participants to ask questions. I have one question for you, Dr. Sandiford.
No problem.
So how does technology impact your work in forensic odontology?
Of course, we're in the age of the whole digitalization, and there is now digital dentistry, whereby we would use x-rays, and we'll be able to determine not just the age of the person, but the sex as well as the race, just by simply using the different forms of dental x-rays. Going further, we were able to determine not just how the person died, but the lifestyle that they had. For example, we were able to, from the bone structure, be able to determine if the person was a diabetic as against hypertensive or had any other health issues affecting them.
Okay, so participants, you can ask your questions. You can type your questions in the chat, or you can open up your mics and ask your questions directly to Dr. Sandiford at this time. Okay, so I see one question in the chat. What would you say to young persons to draw them to this exciting career?
I know growing up, we watched a lot of CSI, crime scene investigation, and I was fascinated, and I always find it very cool to be a part of such a team. And I am not a fighter myself. I'm more of let's say, an educator. So I use my skills to assist the team. So young persons, forensic odontology is a very exciting career. It's a very exciting field, but you must be brave enough to withstand certain deprived conditions.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for that question. I see a hand raised, Tisha Baptiste. You go ahead.
Very interesting topic. I'm listening with my young niece and nephews in mind. You know, you want to influence them into going to certain fields. You know, everybody's going into so many of the humanities and those subjects. So what types of subjects should young people be interested in as they, continue to go from grade to grade? What sciences, what field? Is it dentistry? What is the in terms of the types of subjects they should be targeting if they were interested in that field? Thanks.
Very good question. In order to become a forensic odontologist, let's look at the word odontology. Odontology is just a fancy word for dentists. So first of all, you would have to be a dentist. So you would have to qualify for the local dental school, then pursue some postgraduate training, either in Italy or China or India. And it takes about 2 years. But first and foremost, you must be a dentist. Right? It helps you to better understand and better compare and better form any analysis when it comes to providing evidence.
Okay, and we have another question. Thank you, Dr. Sandiford from Utica. Do you consider the study of your career to be difficult?
Getting persons to understand the role of forensic odontology is the most difficult part. It's still a growing field. In fact, I think I see how many odontologists are in the Caribbean region. What I do know so far, I am probably the second forensic odontologist here. The first one being Dr. William out of Barbados, and now myself. But forensic odontology is now a growing field. There's still a lot of work to be done. And this is the only difficult part, trying to explain to people basically who we are, what do we do.
And how do you ensure the accuracy and the reliability of your findings in your forensic analysis? Because as you said, it's a growing field in our part of the world, especially. So how do you ensure the accuracy and reliability of your findings?
Well, one of the things we rely on before technology is dental records. And in Guyana, I can't speak for any part of the Caribbean, but in Guyana, we are still somewhat stuck behind using some primitive filling material or endodontic treatments. So we are able to use that and guide the finding. Also habits. Like again, I would compare to Guyana, persons like to bite bones, chew hard stuff. So you'll find their teeth being grinded. You'll find we call cracked tooth syndrome, because the fellas would use the beer bottle, they open the beer beverage or whatever with their teeth, causing. So we rely on findings, we rely on the habits of certain sectors of society, and then we use our x-rays, of course, to come up with our definitive analysis.
Okay, and I'm seeing another question in the chat from Helena. Helena Roll is asking, and she has also made the comment that there are no females yet in the field. So, and she's asking if there is any combination of the use of AI, I guess as a follow-up to what you have just answered in terms of how you go about ensuring the accuracy and reliability of the results.
Yes. We were able to use AI in terms of 3D printing. When we take an impression of any subject, be it a criminal case and stuff, we're able to, and this is something, we're able to print it out via 3D printers. And the use of AI to determine, let's say, a possible diagnosis. So in my hand, we have an example of an actual dentition or tooth pattern of someone. And this couldn't be possible without the help of AI.
Okay, thanks again for that answer. And I have another question in the chat, this one, Jennifer Britton. Any scope for work with private sector, or is it better in the public sector?
Well, both. As a forensic odontologist, we are seconded to insurance companies. A lot of persons send in dental claims and stuff, and it is our job to look over those claims and make sure it's the setting that is done. in the private sector, along the lines of private sector, we have private lawyers, especially criminal lawyers, who would want your assistance in determining whether this bite mark is a definitive bite mark or the type of bite mark and what have you not. Public sector, police force, you're there in case of any mass disasters. You're there to identify any skeletal remain that would probably pop up in a desolate area. So there is scope, there's a lot of scope, but you have to apply yourself.
Thank you. And inviting Kathy Smith to ask a question.
I think she has to.
I do apologize.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Sandy Ford, for an excellent presentation. I just have one question. It's a bit long, but some years ago, the Bahamas experienced Hurricane Dorian, where many undocumented migrants lost their lives. I have not heard of your specialty in the Bahamas, and because of such specialty not being available, a lot of loved ones were unable to identify their loved ones who had passed. Are there any other dental specialty that may have been used post-Dorian to help my country identify those undocumented migrants who lost their lives during Dorian? Or your specialty would be the one that should have been used or would have been used? Unfortunately,
that's the term set, forensic dentistry. Okay. We are the only one trained to identify. We're the only one trained to understand, and the only one trained to basically analyze, especially in victims of mass disasters such as Hurricane Dorian. Now, there are other specialties in dentistry, but they are more disease-based. Okay. Whereas we are both disease and evidence-based. We are able to understand, we were able to, for example, I mentioned earlier habits. We were able to understand that coming from certain countries, we look at certain habits and we were able to, and those habits assist in identifying a particular person or a particular person from a different region. For example, again, here in Guyana, we eat a lot of hard snacks. And we would find that because of the hardness of the snack, the molars would be grated or grind down. So we would use that. It may not be a definitive hit, but we use that and we would place it and say, well, this person may or may not be from this particular region. Right? Whereas against the other specialists would say, all right, this person has attrition or abrasion or whatever you not, but they don't have the ability to more or less analyze the whole scenario, disaster scenario. Right? Forensic odontology has been able to, it makes you understand things. It makes you see things from a different point of view. It's like connecting the dots, right? So you're able to connect these mysterious dots and come up with a possible conclusion.
So thank you very much, Dr. Sandy Ford, for your enlightening information and presentation, of course, for sharing your insights into the world of forensic odontology. I'm sure that there are many more questions, but we have run out of time for this. So at this time, I want to invite you to remain with us to listen to the next guest presentation. And I assure you that your expertise is truly fascinating and has given us valuable insights into this field of forensic odontology. Thank you once again. And we move straight into our next presentation at this time. Our next presentation will focus on the exciting world of environmental sciences, with a special emphasis on careers in energy and sustainable development. Our guest presenter is a distinguished sustainable development professional. Derval is the host and producer of the Climate Conscious podcast. This independent communication platform aims to increase public awareness and amplify the Caribbean perspective of climate action and sustainable development. Doval is a sustainable development professional with 13 years of experience working at the nexus of energy and climate in the areas of environmental impact assessments, risk management systems, and sustainable energy policy. Doval holds an MBA in Sustainable Energy Management and a BSc in Environmental and Natural Resources Management and Agribusiness from the University of the West Indies. She co-founded the Caribbean Women for Climate Justice CW4CJ conference and co-leads the Caribbean Climate Justice Alliance Gender Working Group. Doval enjoys traveling, immersing in different cultures, and spending time in nature. Please give a warm welcome to Ms. Doval Bazzi. Another very interesting presentation, I presume.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to the organizers of the CARICOM Girls in ICT Partnership webinar series for the opportunity to share with you a bit about my career journey in energy and sustainable development. So getting straight into it, I characterize my career as being at the nexus of energy and environment. And that's a very exciting and challenging place to be. It can also be controversial because of the way that energy and environment and sustainable development connect and intersect. And I'm sure you have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals. And this gives us a clear illustration of the intersection of energy, environment, and sustainable development. In particular, Goal 7, affordable and clean energy, Goal 13, climate action. And there's also Goal 14, life below water, Goal 15, life on land. And one that is very dear to me, Goal 5, gender equality. And this initiative that we're here today for is tackling Goal 5 by encouraging more women and girls to participate in what has been traditionally a male-dominated space. And this is important because we need to be more inclusive in all sectors, having a balanced representation of both genders, and of course, meaningful participation in leadership and decision-making processes. So my professional journey began as I graduated from the University of the West Indies with a bachelor's in environmental and natural resource management and agribusiness. And I entered the world of work at the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago as a health, safety, and environment trainee. And I always highlight this opportunity as being pivotal to my career trajectory, as this 2-year internship allowed me to bridge the gap between my academic studies and the realities of the industrial world. So after 2 years as a trainee, I was hired as a health, safety, and environment specialist. So there I was responsible for ensuring that the exploration and production activities were conducted in compliance with the relevant environmental legislation, standards, and industry best practices. So on the screen, you can see some of the activities I was involved in as an HSE specialist, things like environmental impact assessments, monitoring of the effluent from those industrial processes to make sure that they were in compliance, stakeholder engagement, which was very important, how we interacted with the fenceline communities, oil spill and drill cuttings modeling, as well as responding to oil spills when they occurred in the marine space. So as a young professional, it was inspiring and challenging to be part of multidisciplinary teams working on multi-million-dollar projects like drilling of oil wells in the Soldado field in the Gulf of Paria, the installation and decommissioning of pipelines and production facilities, as well as I had the opportunity of working on a seismic survey. So as an environmental professional in the energy sector, I started to learn more about climate change and sustainable development. I was introduced to these concepts during my studies, but now I was actually involved in managing these environmental risks as well as the social impacts with communities that are affected by oil and gas operations. And the energy sector is recognized as the largest contributor of global greenhouse gases. But at the same time, energy is also a driver of economic development. And it continues to be a major revenue earner for Trinidad and Tobago, and now Guyana, and also potentially Suriname. So seeking to further my career in energy and environment brought me to the area of sustainable energy, which allows us to address climate mitigation while continuing to fuel our development needs. So my career pivoted from oil and gas to sustainable energy. So I then embarked on an MBA that specialized in sustainable energy management. And I learned about renewable energy technology, solar PV, wind turbines, hydropower, and energy efficiency, as well as the policies and the incentives needed to drive the sustainable energy transition. So I moved from HSE to a role as a sustainable energy research assistant at the Ministry of Energy. So these are all of the roles that I have been in, from HSE specialist to now sustainability consultant. And what I want you to take away from all of this that I'm sharing is that my career journey has been dynamic. And it's an individual journey that you have the liberty to be creative with. So I'll just share a bit about one of the roles that I'm currently in, which is podcast host, which I started the podcast in 2020 because I found that the global conversation about climate change and sustainable development was dominated by the developed world, or the global north, as we refer to it. And the lived experience of the developing world, particularly the Caribbean, was not being highlighted. So the Climate Conscious podcast brings awareness to these issues of environmental sustainability and climate action that is relevant to the Caribbean region and small island developing states. So through interviews with experts and entrepreneurs and activists, the show provides knowledge and insights on addressing climate change and the SDGs, as well as building resilient communities. So over the past 3 years, the podcast has grown and has also created opportunities for me, for my professional development. It has helped me to expand both my network and my expertise in the area of sustainable development. So I'm sharing a snapshot of my journey, of what my career has been like so far. And honestly, I would say I'm just getting started. But if you have a similar interest or background, these are some of the roles that you can consider. So there's health, safety, and environment, there's emergency response, sustainable energy policy development, renewable energy project management, energy efficiency auditing, climate change, as well as the newly developing area of ESG. So there are many points of entry to a career in energy and sustainable development. And the key thing to note is that you can build on whichever area you are starting off in. and develop the skills and the expertise in a specialized area as you progress. And also, it's important to determine what the market needs and wants. So continuing education and professional development is a big part of any career journey, and especially in energy and sustainable development, because things are ever evolving. So you have to stay up to date with the trends and the innovation in the sector. So as I close, I hope that you are able to see that the path is indeed unwritten, and it's up to you to make it whatever you want it to be. And for me, important elements of this are passion and expertise. You know, what are you moved by and what are you good at? Networking and collaboration. It's important to build positive relationships. And I've seen that opportunities come from unexpected places. And also creativity and resilience. Your career is a marathon and not a sprint. You will meet challenges along the way. Pivot, reroute, reinvent, rest if you must, but never quit. Remain in the driver's seat of your life and career as you create your path, and seize opportunities as they present themselves. So with that, I want to thank you for listening and encourage you to check out the Climate Conscious podcast. And also feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions. And at this time, I will entertain any questions that persons may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Another inspirational and edifying presentation, as I presumed. Participants, you are now invited to ask your questions. And while you were presenting, we've already gotten some in the chat. So I'm going to ask you a question that Helena Roll has placed in the chat. Where did the inspiration come from? Where did you get that inspiration?
Assuming that this is for the podcast?
Yes, I guess it's for the podcast.
Yes, okay. So thank you for that question. The podcast really was inspired by me being involved in this space, in the sustainability and the environmental space, but observing that persons, even in the Caribbean or even in my community, if they were not directly involved in environmental or studied it, they were not really making the connection between their day-to-day lives and this global phenomenon of climate change and the climate crisis. The farmer, the taxi driver, the housewife, everyone is affected by climate change, but, they were not necessarily making that connection between the impacts that they were experiencing or how they were also having impacts. So I just wanted to bring, the technical aspect of climate change and sustainable development. I wanted to break it down and make it accessible to everyone to understand what that means as a Caribbean person, and not only the negative part of it, but also highlighting what we can do as individuals, what we can do as a community, and also what persons are doing in the region. So that was the inspiration for starting the podcast. And it's an interview podcast, so it's really having conversations, and I think that is a great medium for people to learn things in a non-technical setting.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Another question from the Secretariat. So from the view of a high school student, what subjects should he or she be interested in if he or she has to choose a career in environmental science?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question because it's very broad. I came from a business science background, and then I chose to focus on environmental. But I had the option of going in several directions. Definitely sciences. If you're sure that you want to pursue environmental management, sciences would be the way to go. But environmental is not just hard science. We need the economists. We need the social scientists as well. So it's really open to anyone. So I would say, follow what comes a bit natural to you or what you gravitate to. And I'm sure you can find a point of entry into the environmental space, but definitely look at the market. So science for sure, but social sciences as well. Because, you may start off even in humanities, and then you just discover you have a passion for the environment because of some personal connection. But having a humanities background doesn't prevent you from entering this space. Even having a creative background doesn't prevent you from entering the space. Communications as well, there's a role to play. But definitely sciences, bio, physics, chem, any of the hard sciences would be a good place to start, as well as management, management studies. The scientists tend to focus on the hard science, but we also need people to focus on the management systems, as well as on the people aspect, the social aspect of, this change that we're trying to create.
Wonderful. And a question from Utica Alves: what does an ESG advisor do?
Yes, so ESG is a developing space. It's environmental, social, and governance. And this looks at in the private sector predominantly. There are demands for companies to engage in responsible business. So it's no longer about their profits to their shareholders, but they also have a responsibility to stakeholders, which is a wider group. And it's not just about dollars and cents, but it's more like the triple bottom line where you look at economic, social, and environmental. So as an ESG advisor, you would come into the organization, look at their operations, look at where they are having impacts in any of these areas, whether the environment, social, or the way that they manage their operations, even human rights issues. Are they paying their workers well? Are they managing their waste? And all of those things. And you would help them to develop new systems and implement new programs that would reduce those risks or those impacts and improve their performance in those areas.
Very interesting, very interesting. I invite participants to put your questions in the chat, put your questions in, and we still have Dr. Sandiford, so you can still pose some questions that can be answered in the chat also. And I have another question for you, Ms. Bazi. What are some of the current trends or innovations in the field of sustainable energy and development that you find most exciting?
Well, yeah, so sustainable energy is a very exciting space because there's so much new happening. But one that is relevant to the region is the area of green hydrogen. And it's also partnering with geothermal. So there are geothermal reserves in the islands such as Dominica, and they are looking at how they can develop that geothermal resource, which is a renewable resource, to produce green hydrogen, which can then be used to power some of the industrial islands, such as Trinidad and Tobago. So that is very exciting. There's a lot of new technology that will have to be introduced, a lot of significant investment, but this also creates new opportunities in terms of employment, and new skills would be required, and it would definitely be a boost to the economic activity in both of those islands, Dominica as well as Trinidad and Tobago, which has a long history of industrial activity. The challenge now is that how do we shift an oil and gas economy to one that is renewable or sustainable? And those geothermal resources in our neighboring or our sister islands in CARICOM, presents that opportunity. So you see there, I guess, the power of regional integration coming up as well.
Yes. And how can we mentor our young girls and boys to become climate or environment conscious? And that's a question from Jennifer Britton.
Yeah, another great question. To me, it starts with awareness. and exposure. So spending time in nature, helping our young ones, our children, to gain a personal connection with nature and understanding why it is important. And I think once they start seeing themselves as part of nature, then they would have an interest in protecting it. Then they would get curious as to what I can do to protect nature, because nature is, providing resources for me. It's providing enjoyment. It has so many valuable attributes. I think helping our young ones understand that they are part of this larger ecosystem. I think that is the starting point, awareness and an appreciation for all the wonderful things that nature provides for us: food, clean air, clean water, spiritual value, places to just have recreation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ms. Bazzi, for your inspiring presentation on careers in energy and sustainable development. Just as with our first presentation, your insights have provided a compelling look into the opportunities and challenges in this vital field. I'm very sure that there are lots of questions still, but we are running out of time. And as we get ready to wrap up today's webinar, I want to emphasize the incredible diversity and opportunities that STEM and STEAM offers to our world, our youth especially. And we've gained valuable insights from our two presenters today, from the world of forensic odontology to careers in energy and sustainable development. I encourage all of you participants to continue exploring these exciting fields and to be curious and engaged. Your curiosity and passion can lead to remarkable careers and contributions to society. Remember, the future is shaped by those who explore, innovate, and never stop asking questions. And I think that was echoed in similar words by Ms. Dorval Bazzi. And so I thank you all for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing the incredible accomplishments you'll achieve in the world of STEM and STEAM. It was my pleasure taking you through this educational journey, and I now turn you back over to Ms. Jennifer Britton, CARICOM Secretariat Focal Point for the CARICOM Girls in ICT Partnership, to give the closing remarks. So once again, I say thanks to Dr. Sandiford and to Ms. Bazzi for doing such a remarkable job. Over to you, Ms. Britton.
Thank you, Mrs. Jeffrey. Thank you to our fabulous speakers today. I think Mrs. Jeffrey has already alluded to how great the presentations were. The goal of the partnership when we started was to ensure that we use a lot of our indigenous domestic expertise, and I think each week has been getting better and better. Today we had somebody from Guyana and one from Trinidad and Tobago, and we thank you ever so much, Dr. Sandiford and Ms. Barzee, for your presentations, for taking the time to prepare, to make it, I think, audience specific. Very good job in terms of children going back, or young people or parents and guardians can really connect with the information that you've shared with us. And it has been illuminating for me, and I'm sure everybody on the call. Dr. Sandiford with telling us that our teeth tell a story, so I'll have to start taking better care of mine, and I think everybody in the room, and Dorval with letting us, with using her expertise to help others tell their stories. Fantastic combination of skills today. And we continue to remember, or ask everyone to remember, that STEM and STEAM skills are not just an aspiration for our region, but an imperative if we're going to be valuable contenders in the emerging and continuing to emerge digital society. So please continue to be interested in those careers, share information as much as you can. Dorval and Dr. Sandiford, if you have other ways you want persons to contact you, please feel free to put it in the chat. Dorval, you can put your podcast link in the chat if you'd like, so other people can connect with you and follow the podcast. We always have many people to thank every week, and I thank the technical team at the University of the West Indies, and at the Secretariat here who help us to pull this all together. And of course, the partners of the Girls in ICT Partnership who continue to support us as moderators and helping us to find speakers, etc. We thank you all for this, and we will be here next Friday as planned, and for the Fridays in November with other speakers who can enlighten on STEAM and STEM careers. So have a good weekend, everyone, and we thank you for joining. Please share the news and share the link so that others can join us next week. Take good care and see you next week back in this space. Bye-bye.